All right, so thank you so much for joining today in the tape group, in the World is New tape group. And of course, I don't know how that is for you, but I would just want to ask a question. Are you happy to leave the world behind for a moment? It's not too much of a sacrifice to do that at this point. Isn't it great to have a place where you actively can practice that? Like, oh my God, I can't believe it. How wonderful that is to let the world go for a moment, to not have to engage with it whatsoever, and feeling that I'm actually entering a very natural state of peace and light and relaxation, release. It's like, okay, we did it. So it's, you might as well let go of it now. What a relief, what a relief. So this is how I'm feeling. And of course you can let go of the world all the time, but since we have set this time to do that, it's going to be very effective, I can tell you that. With great help from our dear friend Joel, and who knows what is going to occur today. So that is lovely to spend time with you. So I'm really grateful that you decided to join and leave everything for a moment. Just sit, being present, see what happens, and being open to receive whatever is given. That is the most beautiful thing. Like, it's the most natural thing you can do, in fact. When you find yourself in a place that you call this earth or this world, whatever, it's like, yeah, that's not really where I belong. I know that, but I still seem to be participating in it quite a bit. But at times I totally let go of it. And these times are basically my favorite times. These times are the moments that I can actually be myself. In the world I have to, forgive, in fact. In the world I have to constantly to forgive everything, like forgiving everything. 70 times 7, as Joel says many times, and Jesus says it too. It's like you forgive 70 times 70 and more and more and more and more, because this world is a mistake. This world is a total mistake. It's a misplaced idea. It's about you being in a not natural environment, bumping your head against all of it, being in conflict, in fact, with everything that's occurring, continuously perceiving lack, limitation, and disease and disaster. If you might trust your eyes, and you can't. So that's why it's so good to have a time that you say, like, okay, this is the tape group. We're going to get some support now. We're going to charge some spiritual battery here. It's like that. And charging it by releasing our self-identity. And it feels so good, because in fact you drop your backpack. You drop your backpack of ideas of what you think you have to, you must do, or now is the time to do this, or I should be doing that, and with my age I should be doing that, or who knows what kind of crazy ideas you carry with you. It's like it's all in that backpack, and now you're allowed to put it down. You don't need to carry it for a moment. You can pick it up if you really want. We'll take care of it, and you can pick it up and when you leave. But it's your own choice to walk around with it. Whether that's ideas of body, whether that's ideas of relationships, whether it's ideas about this world, about this government, about this conflict, about this war, about this, whatever the idea is, it's still the same story. It's all your story and no one else's. You carry it with you. It's your choice. You can do that. You want to walk around with it a little longer, you can. It's like the only thing that you really are discovering is the needlessness of it. there's no need to do what you are doing. There's no need for that. Only, you could say, the only need that you have, whether you choose for a certain experience, is to see that you didn't need it. And this sounds pretty depressing if I say it like this, but it's really true. It's like, no, the body is not the function that you think. No, there's no need for you to be in a body. Like, you only to discover that it's a needless thing. Like, you don't need it in order to function. The same with the way that you have set up your relationships, or that you have set up your world, or your ideas, or your conflicts. It's like there's no need for any of that. And that's what's liberating, of course, like to the core. And that's the way of spirit. It's the way of Christ. Yeah, it's really, I am the way. Jesus says it. Well, did he say you should stay here and linger as long as you can? Try to get some scraps of enjoyment here? No, of course not. He says, I'm not of this world. So are you. You're not of this world. It's a needless place. You can always find a need, but it isn't. There's no need for it whatsoever, neither for your disease, disaster, or your limitation. There's no need for it. Literally, the universe is giving you everything on a continuing basis. Now, this is the way of spirit. And that is, in fact, where your power lies. And so that is today's, I can read to you the title of the God, Omnipresent and the Only Power. God, Omnipresent and the Only Power, chapter 18. That's in fact our focal point, like we focus on this. It's like God, omnipresent, there's only one power, that is that. Does it have anything to do with my powerlessness or with my ideas about how I should apply it? We're going to see that. We're going to see that later in when we take a look at what Joel is actually expressing. So for now, that's quite the introduction, isn't it? So for now, and it feels good, doesn't it? It's like there's nothing like the release of self-identity, the release of what you think you have to do. You don't have to do anything. So anyway, so it's like we're going to start a meditation, and this is a meditation from the parenthesis in eternity, and it has everything to do with the one power. So that's why I use it. I am the way. Live by way of me. Do not live by way of the world. Do not live by way of form. Even so powerful a form as a hydrogen bomb. I am your high tower. I am your fortress. Hide in me. Hide in the understanding that there is only one power, and I am that. Look unto me and be saved, not by might, not by power. Put up thy sword. Those who live by the physical or mental sword will die. Live by my spirit, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit. Dwell in me, let me dwell in you. If you dwell in me, and if you let me dwell in you, if you live in the recognition that I, in the midst of you, am your true identity, your life eternal, I will draw unto you whatever is necessary for your harmonious unfoldment, be it person, place, or thing.
Je suis le chemin. Vivez par moi. Ne vivez pas par le monde. Ne vivez pas par la forme, même pas par une forme aussi puissante qu'une bombe à hydrogène. Je suis votre haute tour et je suis votre forteresse. Cachez-vous en moi. Cachez-vous dans la compréhension qu'il n'y a qu'un seul pouvoir. Et je suis celui-là. Tournez-vous vers moi et soyez sauvés, non par la force, ni par le pouvoir. Remettez votre épée. Ceux qui vivent par l'épée, physique ou mentale, mourront. Vivez par mon esprit, non par la force, ni par le pouvoir, mais par mon esprit. Demeurez en moi. Laissez-moi demeurer en vous. Si vous demeurez en moi, et si vous me laissez demeurer en vous, si vous vivez dans la reconnaissance que je suis au milieu de vous, votre véritable identité, votre vie éternelle, j'attirerai vers vous tout ce qui est nécessaire à votre épanouissement harmonieux, que ce soit une personne, un lieu ou une chose.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining in the meditation. It's like, oh yes, there's a place called home and it's within me. I don't have to look anywhere for it. I don't have to get it. I don't have to, nothing like that. So the only thing that occurs is a release of what you think you are, and what you are truly will come to the surface by itself. You don't have to do anything for it. It's literally like effortless. That's so good, so great. So thank you for joining with in that. So today, like I said, the book, chapter 18. Chapter 18 is the last chapter from the book. So next week we still have another chapter. And then after that we have some kind of a review of the book. And that does just about an hour. But we continue today with chapter 18. And that is God Omnipresent and the only power. The only power. Now that's an interesting chapter too, because Joel asks a couple of questions, and I want to show 3 of them. I don't know if I'm going to answer them, but at least I'm going to show them to you. So this is the title, God Omnipresent and the Only Power. And now the 3 questions. Oh yeah. Here are the 3 questions. Joel asked this. At a certain point in his development, you could say, this was a question that came to him. That is like the most fundamental question for him as a healer, you could say. Is there a principle that will eliminate sin, disease, and death from the world? Is there a principle that will eliminate sin, disease, and death from the world? And the second question is, what is this thing called spiritual power? And then, is this spiritual power something that can be utilized only for the benefit of an individual, or is it something that can be made available to the world? And the answer is yes. It is for the individual and it can be made available to the world. So that's a yes. So what is this thing called spiritual power? And is there a principle that can eliminate sin, disease, disaster from the world? Now, something happened with that to me. I'll show you. It's a very familiar word. Sinner. Right? Sinner. Now, sinner. What is sin? What is sin? This is in fact also a question, because he uses this as like sin. How can we eliminate sin? Now, if we eliminate sin, sin is, what is sin? It's like, you could say, like everything outside of yourself. When you give that power, you can call that sin. Yeah, so sin, and I put another word here. So so you never forget this, I know for sure. It's like, wait, yeah, and make a nice line in between, so, and make it red or blue. Okay. Sinner is outside. Outside. Sinner. Outside. Everything, when you value anything outside, you're sinning. It's like sinner. But here, when you bring that back in, into your inner, it dissolves. This is what I call forgiveness. It's like inner. No, it's your inner experience. If I look outside, I'm in sin. In fact, literally, like I see something that is not there. It's mesmerism that I'm perceiving. But inner, everything is given. Yeah. Yeah. Here we go. All right. So I had like, okay, well, this came to me to share. So that's why it's very helpful. Sinner, yeah, outside. Like I want something from outside, I expect something from outside, I put my value there and I expect something back to me. That's what sin is. Not sin as a guilty or anything like this, no, just that. I put my value system, I place my value outside myself, I'm lost in fact, because there is no such thing as outside of you. I come back to my inner experience of myself, and whereas sin, it's gone. It's literally forgiven. It's being put back in the place where it belongs. Like the value is where it belongs, in your inner being, in your God experience, in your communion. That's where you place your value. Now this is really fundamental. So with the questions that Joel asks, the interesting part is then, is there a way, is there a principle that would eliminate sin, disease, disaster from this world? Now, be very careful in listening to me, because you actually heard it already and you can feel it coming, don't you? Don't you? Here's the thing. It's like, if I place value outside myself, suddenly there's a world. We call this world. Joel calls it this world. This world is the world that you made with your ideas, that if you perceive it, you call that your world. Now that was what sin was. So to eliminate sin, in fact, we forgive and bring it back in, bring it back to ourselves. We convert it to light, to our inner being, which is what light is, what spirit is, what Christ is, what forgiveness is what joy is, what grace is, what release is. Yeah, so that's what you bring back. Now tell me, where is your world? It's gone. Your world is gone. So is there a way to release your world with sin, disease, disaster? Yes, there is. Here. So that's very practical, but very, very clear. This is, like I said, how this comes to me to share. And Joel says it too. Like we're going to read of Joel, of course, too. But the fundamental principle behind it is, as long as you see it outside, in fact, you can't eliminate it, because it is seen as something outside of you. Now, when you take it back in, take responsibility for it, it's like, wait a minute, there's nothing to value outside of me, because there's only one consciousness, and it's me, it's mine, I'm everything there is in that sense. I'm the way, as Jesus says, like that's all here. It's all within me. I and my Father are one, right? That's not two, that's one. Now that was one question. Now the other one, of course, I forgot already. Because my mind is in a constant state of release. I can't help it, especially when I'm in this setup. Oh yeah, what is this thing called spiritual power? What is that thing called spiritual power? It's like, is that something that you use? No. Is that something that is present? Yes. Are you aware of it? Well, that depends on it. It depends on if you're aware of your spiritual power that is moving you, that is literally like giving everything to you on a moment by moment basis. You could call it presence. What is this spiritual power? It is presence. It is your consciousness. It is right here. It has nothing to do with the outside world. It is not functioning in the world. It is not functioning to heal other people. It is not functioning as a power outside that does things, as a magical, who knows what, Superman kind of idea. Like, no, 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 no. This is all happening in you since you are the only one. You are the one. Now, receiving that for yourself, you see that this power is literally, say, nourishing you, is making everything, giving you everything that you need on a moment by moment basis. Do you have anything to do with that? No. It's just that in your awareness of it, it functions in your consciousness. In you, yeah, you're aware that it's functioning like that. It is functioning that way anyway, except, of course, in your separate dream of misidentification with you as a human being. So that is that. In fact, you cannot use the power in the world, because then you would miss the complete purpose, because there is no world. We just saw that. No, we take responsibility, sinner, inner, and there it is. There's no world. There's no world. So here it is. The spiritual power is literally the only power, because what else could there be? See, that's the science, you could say. It's the Christian science that we're teaching, that Joel is educated with, and that Joel grew up with, you could say. It's the Christian science. In our setup as an, yeah, you could say Christian mysticism. So that's part of that. So that was question 2. Now question 3. I think I answered that one too. I said yes to it. Like, is this spiritual power something that can be utilized only for the benefit of the individual, or is it something that can be made available to the world? It can be made available to you as an individual, in that it functions in the world. Because you still are walking around in this world. You still do your things. You enter into darkness on a daily basis. You enter into darkness. Now, when you are aware of your spiritual power within, you can see yourself as an inner being instead of a sinner. You forgive yourself the idea that you thought you would be able to sin. And then you walk around from within, entering into darkness, shining your light in it. Just like that. It's like just like that. With no intention to place any value of any occurrence here in this world. Because you recognize that it has no reality. That in fact all the occurrences that appear to be happening have no existence whatsoever. Now that goes really far, I understand. So now I'm getting really curious. I'm getting really curious what Joel is going to say about this. So Joel, come on in. The Christ, being our very own consciousness. This is not someone else's consciousness, it's my own consciousness. Appears to me in tangible form. In biblical days it appeared as manna from the skies and water flowing out of the rocks. It appears as a few loaves and fishes and tax money in the mouth of a fish. Today it appears as food, clothing, housing, right activities, companionship, even as unimportant thing as a parking space. What are these experiences but demonstrations of the consciousness of the Christ appearing in tangible form, appearing outwardly as the form necessary at the moment? What else is that but that? That's what Joel is asking here. Another question. So the Christ, being our very own consciousness, appears to us in tangible form. Is that so? Yes, it does that. But, like we just said, there's no world. And now here we are. It's like being in our inner, it appears that you need things for your daily life. It appears that you need to pay rent, that you need to put gas in your car when you want to drive it, or put some electricity in it, whatever. And all these things. You want to go somewhere, you will need something. Now, is that given to you? Yes, absolutely. Why is that? Why is that? Is that a power working in me? No, that is in fact your recognition that everything is within you and everything is going to be given to you if you recognize that it's like, I and my Father are one. Seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, and everything else will be added unto it. But not necessarily as the form that you would want, but in the form that is useful for you in this process that you find yourself. Because there's spirit functioning as a bridge between, it's like heaven and this place of darkness. And this place of darkness, I'm saying this because, in fact, it is a place of darkness. It's like it is the denial of the love of God, so it's quite dark. And you can function in it, sure, absolutely. Do you get all the things that you need? Yes, you get all the things that you need, but not according to what you think it's supposed to be. So it will always be different than you expect it to be. But of course, if there's an all-sustaining God, what could you possibly lack? Like that in itself is impossible. Or you dream, or you are afraid that the whole story doesn't work, and you come into a situation that is unreal, lack, limitation, disease, disaster, and all this death, and you name it. Like if you enter into that sphere, you could say, then you have in fact let fear be your guide instead of trusting that God is giving you literally everything on a moment-by-moment basis. That can be a suggestion to go somewhere, do something, to receive something, to something for your sustenance. Like your life is not depending on dollars or whatever the valuta is that you use in your country. Is like your life is not depending on dollars. Your life is not depending on a government. Your life is not depending on a political situation. Your life is not depending on anything, but, because that was the sinner part, but the inner part. It's like your life is only depending on, it's not even depending on, it's communicating continuously what you really are, what you recognize as yourself to be, what you are without your definitions of yourself, without your wish list for yourself, without your desires of yourself. Like, no, release. So continuously letting go of that brings it back to, I'm given everything. God's grace is my sufficiency in all, it's like literally in all things, of course. So the more I let that be complete, what could I possibly miss in my experience of myself? Now that is where it's about. It's like it's about your experience of yourself. No one else, nothing else. It is not depending on anything else. And that's a learning trajectory that you're on. To see like, oh no, it's not that. Oh no, it's not that. Oh no, it's not that. Like, oh, no, it doesn't work like that either. Oh my God, can't believe it. I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that either. I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. And you start to discover more and more and more that everything is working perfectly if you allow it to be whole and perfect. Not by your definition, because your definitions avail you nothing. The Christ is that state of consciousness, yours and mine, when the hate and the fear and the love of error have been removed. That's an interesting statement. The Christ is that state of consciousness, yours and mine, when the hate and the fear and the love of error have been removed. If in the tiniest degree we can lose our fear of error, whether it is the fear of human thought or human emotion, whether it is the fear of somebody else wrong thinking or of our own wrong thinking, which is the same, whether it is the fear of the universal mortal thinking, whether it is the fear of infection, contagion, lack or limitation, if in a measure fear can be removed released from our consciousness, in that degree is our consciousness the Christ consciousness. Now there's not really like a degree in that. It's either it is that you have released the fear or you don't. But if you see it on the timeline, it looks like a process. So it's like, okay, now this theme is coming up. This specific theme is coming up. Like now I'm really afraid to lose my partner, or I'm really afraid to not having enough money, or I'm really afraid that my health is not that good, or that this pain will never go. Like now that, see, you have then a specific item, you could say, in which is like your opportunity to release it, in your recognition that it's like my grace is my sufficiency. Release this fear. Release the fear of having to be in that, or that it will be continuous, that it will be chronic pain, or whatever your idea is, chronic disease, or anything, any description that you picked up in this world, any dark idea. So allow that to be released and replaced with a whole new principle within you. It's like allow that healing, allow that change to occur. And you say like, well, I've tried it 100 times and it didn't work. And I say, well, it did work. Believe me, it did work. It did work. So how is that then? If things keep coming back, and it seems like it keeps coming back, now what am I going to do then? It's like, well, that is still an idea. It's also a dark idea that it doesn't work. It's like it's just in a way, that's all. It has no reality. Release it. Release it. Let it go. Once we realize God is our consciousness, we can expect anything to flow forth into expression. Anything that we need at the moment. Out of that consciousness come our safety and our security. Out of our own consciousness we find ourselves safe and in the secret place of the Most High, dwelling in the consciousness of Christ's truth that the pilots of this world are not power. Pilates, I should say, not pilots. Pilates of this world are not power. So you see, once we realize God is our consciousness, like we're in perfect communication with God, that's happening by itself. We don't have to establish that connection. It is there. We can deny it by thinking we lost it, but that is simply not true. You know, it's like, oh yeah, wait a minute, that's also a dark idea, that you can be separate from God. It's impossible. We can expect anything to flow forth into expression, anything that we need at the moment. Out of that consciousness. But see, there's an open-mindedness related to it. It's like we can expect anything to flow forth into expression. So if that doesn't happen, you're just trying to not let that happen, because this is what we can expect. Everything we need will be given, but you will have to be open to receive it. Otherwise it cannot be given to you. If you want to hold on to your idea of it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, then it will not work in your experience of yourself. So it's like, release that. Have an open mind, or ask for it. It's like, please, let my mind be open to receive the love of God in this moment. There's your safety and security. So here's our spiritual healing class. This is obviously like what spiritual healing is, in fact. So allowing this light to take care of it. We cannot do it. No. You have tried. It didn't work. No. The way that you do it, it will not work. So you can't get yourself out of your limitation. What do you need? A moment of open-mindedness, that everything is different than you thought it was, that you're not, all the descriptions you gave yourself is not what you are, it's never how this is going to work. So it's like that, none of that was true. Now I can stay with that as long as I want, and I do. But if I release it in this moment, I can have a totally different experience. One that is full of light, and that will restore your sanity, and that will bring back the memory of your connectedness with God, your communion, your natural communion, of course. So it's like, that's the step from sinner to inner. And I love that. I love that idea. It's like, no, it's not out there. It's all in here. It's all in here. Go within. Be still. Listen. Open your mind so that something else can occur, can come to you. Don't stop it. You can do it. It can be given to you, of course. It is for you. For who else? There's only you. So really beautiful. So thank you, Joel, for the instruction today, for the questions that you put up, and that gave the possibility to in fact come into a healing experience. That's so lovely. And now on top of that, we're also going to listen to a tape.
This is to be the demonstration of the Spirit with us. Yes, we can go back to scriptural language and use the word Emmanuel. Emmanuel is the demonstration of God with us, but it is not an explanation of it. Moses could demonstrate Emmanuel for the Hebrew people, and so could many of the Hebrew prophets in some measure. The Master could demonstrate omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience, and he could so imbue his disciples with the Spirit that they in turn could be instruments of its demonstration, but without any of them ever having been able to teach it. That is why we find nothing in Scripture, nothing in the Bible about how to learn spiritual power. There is nothing in the Scripture of any part of the world that will explain spiritual power to you. But in all Scripture, it explains the nature of spiritual power and shows forth its demonstration. I know that it is difficult for you to grasp this point, that while we sit here, all of us together, acknowledging that we cannot teach spiritual power, that before the evening is over, some of us at least, and the possibility of all of us, demonstrating, feeling spiritual power, experiencing spiritual power. So it is that you must understand that you are not to be concerned with the intellectual aspect of what we are undertaking. You are not to concern yourself with whether you can give a satisfactory explanation of spiritual power, for you will not. What you will do is experience it, demonstrate it, show it forth, and bless with it. That is our function. That is our responsibility. The nature of spiritual power being beyond human comprehension, we are not going to try to understand it. We are not going to try to receive it. Instead of using the human mind in an intellectual exercise, we are going to rest the mind. We are going to live and move and have our being in spirit, in quietness, in confidence, because it is only in quietness and in confidence that the Spirit can be upon us. We are not going to strive mentally. We are going to be still. Be still and know that I am God. Does not this lift the responsibility from your shoulder? Be still. The battle is not yours. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I, in the midst of you, am God. Rest in quietness, in confidence. The Spirit of God manifests itself, announces itself. He performeth that which is given, which is appointed for me to do. I need not battle. He that is within me is greater than he that is in the world. I of my own self can do nothing. The Father within me, he doeth the works. Be still. Be still and know that I am God. One thing we have learned about the nature of God is that it is peaceful, quiet, gentle, that it requires no mental effort, no great wisdom. A little child can demonstrate spiritual power. The more childlike we are, the greater the spiritual endowment will be that makes itself evident in our lives. If spiritual power were of the nature of knowledge, all of our college professors would have it, and we would be without it. But knowledge is not spiritual power. Be still. Even the search for God is only in effect when we are no longer making the search. The search for the Holy Grail has always failed until the search was over. And in every case when the search was over, the Holy Grail was revealed. So with us, when we are finished with our mental striving, when we are finished with running to holy mountains and holy temples, when we have reached that point of utter exhaustion that is weary of searching in time and space, and we sit ourselves down to the quiet, still, at rest, in the moment that ye think not, in the moment that ye take no thought, the bridegroom cometh, the Christ, the spiritual endowment, in the moment that ye think not. in the moment of complete relaxedness from human effort, you see, we know the nature of spiritual power. It steals into us when we are unaware of it. It overtakes us when we have stopped running away from it, or when we have stopped chasing it. Why? Because of omnipresence. It is, and it always has been, right where I am. It is, and it always has been, right where you are. The Spirit of God is not to be found in struggles, in strivings, but in quietness and in peace. Why did the Master go away for 40 days to be alone? To pray, to be at peace, to be still, to be away from the clamor of the world, just long enough so that inner stillness could develop. If we do not know what spiritual power is, we do know that we feel it when we are still enough. Still enough to know that I in the midst of me is God. Still enough to know that it operates without might, without power. That it operates without any human help. Operates when we are absent from the body and present with the Lord. It operates, it functions, it appears outwardly manifest as the fruitage of life when we are still, when we are receptive. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Does he when he is not still? Does he when he is taking thought? Does he when he is trying to figure intellectually the whys and the wherefores of God and the workings of God? No. No, my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is not of this world. Do not search around in the mountains, in the temples, in the books of this world. Seek me where I am within you. Know ye not that ye are the temple of the living God, the temple which houses God? Therefore you must find God within yourself. When you do, you will find yourself spiritually endowed from on high. For where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is spiritual presence and spiritual power and spiritual grace. May we not know the nature of spiritual power through the word grace? Do we not know that the grace of God is made manifest not by our efforts, not by our seeking or striving, but rather when we have abandoned human hopes? Once it came through in a class, those very words, to the students starting the class. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. It is fitting that we remember that. Abandon hope in external means, in external powers. Abandon hope in the known ways of the world. Abandon hope in the wisdom of this world. Abandon hope in the powers of this world. Abandon hope that your armies and navies and air forces are going to bring peace on earth. Abandon hope that the wisdom of man is going to solve these complex problems. But do not abandon hope. Just abandon hope in human means, physical means, mental means, and then strive to understand within, what do I mean by spiritual means? Because with every answer that unfolds to you within, you are endowed to that much greater extent with spiritual power. The subject of cosmic consciousness has a relationship to this very subject of spiritual power, because the revelations that come through this cosmic consciousness are revelations of grace. They are demonstrations of spiritual power, because they come from powers that are not human. The wisdom that is unfolded cosmically does not come because you study books. Much of it comes to people who have never studied any books. There again you have a question and an answer to find. The nature of the spiritual power that brings to some great musical talents, great literary, great artistic talents, to others spiritual talents. There again you will find it fruitful activity and meditation to concern yourself with that question, the nature of the spiritual power that brings forth fruitage as cosmic consciousness. Stillness is the word, silence is the word. When you read the thunder of silence, you will perceive something of the nature of what I'm talking about tonight, of the message that is coming through, because there, just in occasional sentences, you will glimpse the fact that the wisdom that came through, that formed that book, was not of human origin. It was an activity of spiritual power. No human could have brought through that knowledge because it does not exist in human awareness. It had to come from behind the scenes. It had to be generated, not by human might nor human power, certainly not by human knowledge, but by a spiritual presence, a spiritual power we call the grace of God. There is no more wonderful term in the world for spiritual power than the word grace. When you can see grace as something of a divine nature, or the activity of grace as really being a divine action, one that comes to humans but is not generated by humans. In other words, an act of grace is an act of something beyond our human comprehension, yet coming into human experience. You can experience the grace of God. You can retire at night sick and wake up well in the morning without knowing why or how, for no known reason. You may, out of a clear blue sky, find influences coming into your lives to change them, and you will know that it is an act of grace, because no human started it, no human projected it. Then you will see, that grace operated as spiritual power made evident in my life. Any time that something comes to us which we may describe, as we often do, as coming out of the blue, coming from nowhere, we are usually describing an act of grace, functioning through spiritual power. Whenever we behold the operation of the harmonious laws of nature, we are witnessing an act of grace through spiritual power. We cannot explain it, but we know that no human element is involved. There is one of the cues for you to remember. Spiritual power. In spiritual power, or with spiritual power, there is no human element involved. And yet it all takes place in and as the experience of humans. It takes place as certain human experiences, but human experiences of divine origin. As you face the daily problems, your own or the world's, the first step in bringing spiritual power to bear is to realize this, that spiritual power is not a power that destroys evil. It is a power that reveals the non-power of evil. Then you will have the greatest cue. You will have the greatest insight to the nature of spiritual power once you understand that it does not operate to kill off your enemies. It does not operate to destroy your enemies. It does not operate to bring you victories. It does not operate to overcome sin, disease, death, lack, or limitation. It operates to reveal to you the spiritual nature of God and man and the universe, and the non-power of carnal mind, that belief in two powers which seems to threaten us. We believe a man or a group of men threaten us. We believe an ideology threatens us. We need only remember 20 years ago when it was a different man and a different ideology. We need only remember 20 years before that when it was still another one. We can go on back in history to the beginning of time and name the names of the tyrants and their particular ideologies. As each one was overcome, another one rose up. It is never worthwhile to overcome the prevailing one. It is only an interval until the next one appears on the scene. However, in this age, when all of us have a deep concern, it is necessary that 10 righteous men, using that 10 figuratively, must know this truth about spiritual power. It is not going to overcome our enemies or destroy them. It is not going to win victories for us. It is going to reveal to us God's kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And the only reason that it has been delayed for 2,000 years is the same reason it was delayed before the Master. The Hebrews expected a Messiah, but they expected him to be a king who would defeat Rome, and how badly they were fooled. Their Messiah never took up arms. Their Messiah never drew the sword. But the lesson was not learned on earth. And so for 2,000 years we have been praying to a God to do what the Messiah did not do. We have been hoping to find a God to overcome our enemies. Oh yes, we were willing to use knives and pistols as long as they would help. But when they did not help, then we went higher. If you would understand and demonstrate the nature of spiritual power, begin to see that it is not going to destroy your enemies. It is not going to be a power over evil powers. It is going to be a revelation. God's kingdom established on earth, not by overcoming, but by revealing the unreal nature of the enemy, the carnal mind, revealing the non-power of the impersonal evil. Once we stop personalizing the evil, naming the tyrants and their ideologies, once we throw it all into one great big enemy called carnal mind, mortal mind if you like it, and then realize whence came the carnal mind. If from God, its only power is good. If not from God, it has no power. And in your own losing of fear, you will be demonstrating God's kingdom on earth. God's kingdom is not an army or a navy. God's kingdom is not a Messiah who is a great king. God's kingdom is gentle, peaceful, spirit. God's kingdom is made up of love. is endowed with spiritual power that maintains and sustains the harmony of God's kingdom through His grace. There is a spirit in man. It becomes necessary that we abide in stillness, in quietness, in confidence, that spiritual power may have outlet through us and be the act of grace that reveals harmony where a very materialistic world seems to be. Really, it is not a materialistic universe. Really, there is no materialistic universe. There is only a material or materialistic sense of a spiritual universe. This universe is spiritual, but it can only be experienced through spiritual discernment. This is what the Master meant when he said, "I have overcome the world." He did not mean that he had overcome Caesar, or that he had overcome the Sanhedrin, or persecution, or hate, or Antichrist. He meant he had overcome within himself the materialistic sense of the world. He was no longer living by might or by power, but by the Spirit. Just as later, Paul was enabled to say, "I live, yet not I. Christ liveth my life." This is spiritual power, the Christ living our life, or the Christ being the only power in our life. When the Christ is the source of our good, we are spiritually endowed. We receive bread, meat, wine, and water spiritually. This is why meditation alone is the way to experience spiritual presence and spiritual power. Because it is in meditation that you learn to let physical powers and mental powers be at rest. Physical desires or mental desires be at rest. And then, when there is an absence of self, any self that wants something, desires something, or even hopes to be something, when that is absent, spiritual power is revealed. The spiritual power is always within you. But as long as the word I is there in its human sense, spiritual power cannot come to light, because personal sense is the greatest barrier to the experience of spiritual power. And the reason is that spiritual power can't do something for me or for you. It can only be and do. And those who are still and receptive and listening for the Word of God, they receive this spiritual power that does all of the things on earth that Jesus said He came to earth to do, when He said that He came to do the will of the Father. The will of the Father was to heal the sick, raise the dead, preach the gospel, forgive the sinners. And yet he said he couldn't do that. It is the spiritual power within me that does it, but only when a personal sense of I is absent. And please remember that that is why very often this spiritual power doesn't come to the very people who want to do good in the world. Because that very desire to do good in the world is a desire to glorify the personal selfhood. It is a wonderful thing when you sit down to meditate to be able to remember quickly that divine grace or spiritual power is not brought about by physical or mental means, because then it enables you to be still at once and wait for the spiritual endowment to take place. I am endowed from on high, the Master says, not from any effort of my own, but from on high. I am only the receptivity and the instrumentality, the transparency. I am endowed from on high. Wait in this city before you go out to preach. This is the Master giving final instructions to the disciples. Wait ye in this city, in this consciousness, until ye are endowed from on high. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining to listen to Joel. And it's like, wow, that was over before we knew it. That's so fast. It's really lovely. So we heard a lot of the same as what we have shared of course, in Joel's words. That's why it's so great to, in fact, discover the universal language, which is pointing in the same direction, is reliable in that sense. It's given, it's one voice speaking. It is not different ideas about something or different opinions about how you should do this. No, this is like the uniting the sons of God, you could say. So Joel expresses this really beautiful with what he just shared. And so I'm happy that we listened to that. I thought it was a great tape to connect to the chapter. And the chapter, I don't know if you read it. It's great to read, so take time to do so. And we continue next week with the next chapter, which always sounds like the same title almost, but it's not. Let me see. The next title is God, the Omnipresent Reality. So the focus will be a little bit more on the omnipresence. Now, that is a great principle anyway. It's like, that's why you can't find God. He's everywhere, you could say. It's like, God is everywhere. Where you look for it, He's there. So that's really interesting. So we're going to take a look at that next week. I will send you an email with a tape, and then this time probably with a transcript. Last week we didn't have one for this tape, but next week I'll see if I can find one. So thank you so much for joining. This week there are some activities. Tomorrow morning, early in European time, there's a Dutch language meeting, A Course in Miracles in Dutch, we could say. So you're welcome to join always. And then there's on Wednesday and Thursday an anthology of enlightenment with two Middle Eastern masters, one of them being Hafiz and the other one Zarathustra. So that's going to be interesting. Then we have on Sunday, of course, our tape group. And then the week after, there are 3 meetings scheduled for the Middle Eastern master called Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And I just love to take time to focus on that. So there will be scripture, there will be Course in Miracles, there will be references all over the place, from references to Jesus, just as an, say, Christ representation in Christian mysticism. Even though he's from the Middle East, it's kind of interesting. You don't expect Christianity to come from the Middle East, and it actually does. And of course you know this, but once you go through the masters of the whole world, it is still surprising. Now Jesus Christ, of course, is familiar to all of us, and so it will be an interesting week. And like I said, the last meeting, that's in 2 weeks then, is the review of the World is New. Some of the chapter expressions will come back. It will be an hour meeting, and then we also start the World Work tape group. So this is like, okay, the world is new, sure, but we have work to do here. We have work to do, obviously, and we call that World Work. And Joel has many tapes related to it. So that's why I thought it's great to continue with the tape group, but then in the World Work setup. And what that means, we will, say, discover when it starts. So these are 9 meetings up to, I think, the 2nd week of November. And of course, then also we'll start Christian Science, a whole new Christian Science sequel, starting also in 2 weeks. I'm just saying this because you might say, like, well, I only saw references to A Course in Miracles. Is it A Course in Miracles Christian Science? I think, no, it's a Christian Science as an individual experience, not as an organization, not as a church, not as a Boston church or anything, as Christian Science. Like, we look at the Christian science of spiritual healing, you could say. So, and I use for that whatever is given. This is always the same. I'm not literally using only A Course in Miracles. No, it's like this one is coming as it is given to me per meeting. So it's going to be very interesting. And I love it because apparently it's time to expose that. And I love that. Anyway, so thank you so much for your participation and presence today, and I hope to see you soon.